The planet Zareth 9 was never meant for peace. It was a world ruled by strength, where the weak were mocked, the small ignored, and the kind forgotten. To the alien races that lived there, compassion was a disease. Power decided everything. The girl had learned that lesson too many times. Her name was Lyra, a frail, thin child among tall, scaled beings who believed humans were little more than soft pets of the galaxy. She had been traded, captured, and mocked for years, passed between alien handlers like a broken toy. Her green dress hung in tatters, her pale skin marked by dust and pain. Yet her eyes, those strange human eyes, still carried something they couldn't understand. On the outer ring of the desert camp, alien guards roared with laughter. Their sharp teeth gleamed under the twin suns. In the center of their ring stood Lyra, clutching a small bundle wrapped in rough cloth. "Show us what your tiny earth creature can do," one of the guards sneered. "You said it's dangerous?" The others howled. The camp's commander, a towering reptilian warlord named Karzek, leaned forward on his spear. "Go on, little human. Entertain us, you and your beast," the child they didn't notice at first. He was quiet, sitting near the sand mound, drawing in the dirt with his finger. His name was Eli, another human, smaller than Lyra, no older than 7. He looked fragile, like the desert wind could blow him away. But when Lyra looked toward him, she didn't see weakness. She saw focus. Calm. The aliens didn't. One of the guards kicked the bundle from Lyra's hands. The cloth tore open. A small black and white creature rolled out, shaking the sand from its fur. The aliens blinked, confused. "That's it?" one said. "That's your monster? That little rodent?" They laughed until their voices echoed across the canyon. The creature yawned. Then it looked at them. The laughter faltered. The honey badger's eyes glowed faintly gold in the sun. "Please," Lyra whispered, her voice trembling. "Don't hurt them." But the child stood up. Eli's small shadow stretched long across the sand. He brushed the dust from his hands and looked at the ring of aliens as if they were nothing but loud insects. His voice was calm, quiet, and strange in that silence. "Badger," he said softly. "Protect her." The world changed. The alien nearest the creature barely had time to scream. The honey badger moved, a blur of muscle and fury, claws tearing through scales like thin armor. Sand exploded in every direction. One alien after another fell as the small creature shredded through them with savage precision. The air filled with roars, smoke, and the metallic scent of blood. The camp erupted into chaos. Karzek shouted orders, but his soldiers stumbled back, fear replacing their laughter. They fired plasma bolts, but the creature was too fast, too small. It darted between their legs, leaping, slashing, roaring with something primal. Lyra stood frozen, eyes wide with horror and awe. She looked toward Eli. The boy didn't move. His gaze followed the honey badger calmly, as if every attack, every movement was part of a rhythm only he could hear. When it was over, the camp was silent. Bodies lay scattered, the dust slowly settling over them. The honey badger stood beside Lyra again, chest heaving, claws dripping with dark blood. Its small body trembled, not from exhaustion, but from the fading rage that had burned like fire. Eli walked forward and placed his hand gently on the creature's head. "Good boy," he said quietly. Lyra's voice shook. You trained that?" Eli looked up at her. His eyes were not those of a child anymore. "He's not trained," he said simply. "He understands." From the edge of the canyon, another roar echoed. The rest of Karzek's army was arriving, dozens of armored soldiers and war beasts charging toward the camp. Dust storms rose behind them. Lyra felt her chest tighten. She turned to Eli. "We have to run!" But Eli just looked back toward the oncoming army, then at the honey badger beside him. The creature growled low, teeth bared again. The boy smiled faintly. "They mocked us," he said softly. "Now they'll understand." And as the alien soldiers advanced, the honey badger crouched, ready to launch again, its eyes glowing brighter than the twin suns. The desert would remember what came next. The sandstorm thickened as the alien army closed in. Dozens of reptilian soldiers advanced through the dunes, their metallic armor glinting under the twin suns. Plasma rifles hummed with deadly energy, and war beasts the size of trucks snarled at the front lines. The camp that once echoed with laughter now reeked of fear. Lyra stood trembling, clutching a small piece of torn cloth in her hand. The ground around her was littered with broken weapons and the fallen. The honey badger stood beside her, growling low, its fur streaked with blood and sand. Its tiny body looked almost absurd beside the massive beasts ahead, yet every alien who met its glowing eyes hesitated. Eli stepped forward. The boy's calm was unnerving, even to Lyra. His expression didn't show fear or anger, only a strange focus, as though something deep inside him guided every breath. "They're coming," Lyra said, her voice shaking. "I know," Eli replied softly. "Let them," Karzek roared orders from the front. "Crush the humans! Burn the beast!" His soldiers obeyed, raising their weapons in a synchronized volley. The air cracked with energy as the first plasma bolts streaked toward them. Eli didn't flinch. "Down," he said quietly. The honey badger reacted instantly, diving low and kicking up a wave of sand. The bolts struck the ground, erupting into bursts of blue fire. Before the smoke cleared, the creature was already moving, darting across the battlefield like a living storm. It struck the first war beast, clawing at its exposed joints until the alien creature collapsed with a thunderous crash. Then it vanished again into the dust, reappearing behind another soldier and tearing through armor with impossible speed. Screams filled the desert. Lyra watched, stunned. How is it that fast?" Eli's eyes followed the chaos with quiet certainty. "He doesn't see them as soldiers," he said. "He sees them as threats to protect against." "That's all," Karzek growled in frustration and stepped forward himself, gripping his massive plasma spear. His armor gleamed with marks of rank, his long tail slicing the sand behind him. "Enough of this!" he roared. "Face me, human!" Eli turned his head slightly, almost amused. "You shouldn't have mocked her," he said. Karzek charged. His spear glowed bright, cutting through the air toward Eli. Lyra screamed. The honey badger appeared between them in a blur, taking the full strike on its armored back. Sparks flew, and Karzek stumbled as the creature spun, clamping its jaws onto his arm. Metal cracked. The alien howled and tried to shake it off, but the honey badger wouldn't let go. It clawed up his chest, tearing through plates of armor as if shredding paper. In desperation, Karzek slammed it into the ground, once, twice, each impact echoing across the canyon. The creature growled in rage but didn't stop. Eli walked forward slowly. Lyra reached out. "Eli, stop! He'll kill you!" The boy's voice was steady. "No," he said softly. "He won't." Karzek turned, blood dripping from his mangled arm. His yellow eyes burned with fury. "You think your beast can save you, human?" Eli looked at him with an unsettling calm. "He's not saving me." "He's saving her," the alien sneered. "Why?" "She's weak." That word seemed to freeze the air itself. Lyra lowered her head, but Eli's voice cut through the noise like a blade. "She's human," he said. "And that's something you'll never understand." Karzek lunged again, roaring. The honey badger met him mid-strike, claws tearing across his chest. The alien staggered, his weapon falling into the sand. He collapsed to his knees, gasping. The small creature stood over him, snarling, teeth bared inches from his face. Eli's tone was quiet. "Stop!" The honey badger froze immediately, though its muscles trembled with restrained fury. Lyra stared in disbelief. The entire alien army hesitated, their leader on the ground, defeated by a child and a creature smaller than their helmets. The silence stretched. Eli stepped closer and looked into Karzek's terrified eyes. "Go back to your masters," he said softly. "Tell them this world doesn't belong to you anymore." He turned away. The honey badger followed, calm once more, its breathing steady. Lyra walked beside them, still shaking. You could have killed him," she whispered. Eli looked at her, his eyes distant, almost sad. "Killing him isn't the lesson," he said. "Fear is." Behind them, the alien soldiers began dragging their wounded commander away. None dared look the humans in the eye. As they crossed the dunes, Lyra finally asked, "Eli, where did you find him?" "The honey badger?" The boy glanced down at the creature, which was now padding quietly beside him. "He found me," Eli said simply. I was alone. He was alone. We understood each other. Lyra frowned. You mean you can talk to him? Eli shook his head. Not with words. They kept walking until the alien camp was just a shadow on the horizon. The desert wind carried the faint scent of smoke and fear. Lyra looked back once more, then at the boy who seemed far older than his years. Eli, she said softly, what are we going to do now? He looked up at the endless desert ahead, the twin suns setting behind jagged rocks. They'll come again, he said quietly, and next time, they won't laugh. The honey badger growled low, as if agreeing. Somewhere far above, in orbit, unseen ships were already turning toward Zareth 9. The war had only just begun. The night on Zareth 9 was quiet, too quiet for a world that had just seen blood. The two moons hung like pale eyes above the dunes, watching the girl, the boy, and the beast as they moved through the wasteland. Every sound, every gust of wind felt heavy, waiting for something new to begin. Lyra walked close to Eli, her steps uneven in the soft sand. She had wrapped a torn cloth around her shoulders, still stained with the dust of battle. The honey badger padded beside them, silent but alert, its head turning every few seconds, sniffing the air. They won't stop, she whispered. Karzek will come again with more soldiers. Eli didn't answer at first. His eyes stayed fixed on the dark horizon where faint lights blinked. Alien ships patrolling the skies. I know, he said finally. That's why we have to find the others before they do. Others? Lyra frowned. There are more humans? He nodded. Hidden in the ruins to the north. They were taken after the first invasion. Some escaped. They're waiting for someone to lead them out. Lyra looked at him, disbelief softening into hope. You know where? I can find them, he said. The honey badger knows they're sent. The creature gave a low growl, almost like it understood. Lyra still couldn't decide which was stranger, the boy's calmness or the animal's intelligence. Sometimes it felt like the two shared one mind. Hours passed as they climbed over sharp rocks and crossed long valleys of ash. Once a patrol ship swept over them, scanning the ground with beams of light. Eli pressed his hand to the honey badger's back, and it instantly went still, lying flat in the sand. Even its breathing slowed, blending with the wind. When the ship drifted away, the creature rose again, quiet and watchful. Lyra finally asked, Eli, how do you control him like that? The boy shook his head. I don't control him. I trust him. He knows what I want before I say it. She stared at the creature, watching its muscles ripple under the moonlight. He acts like he understands fear. He does, Eli said softly. He was born in it. Just like us. They stopped at a ridge overlooking a crater filled with broken ships and rusted alien machinery. Faint fires burned among the wrecks, signs of life. Lyra's eyes widened. Humans? Eli nodded. Stay behind me. They descended the slope slowly. The honey badger led, growling whenever metal shifted or sand slid. When they reached the center of the crater, shadowy figures appeared. Humans, dirty and thin, their eyes wary. One of them stepped forward, holding a crude spear. Who are you? The man demanded. Eli, the boy replied simply. We came from the south. The man's eyes moved to the creature beside him. His breath caught. Is that from Earth? Eli nodded. He's my friend, the group murmured among themselves. A woman with gray hair pushed forward, her voice trembling. You're from the transport camps. We thought everyone there was gone. Lyra spoke softly. We escaped. The aliens. They're coming again. The survivors looked at one another in fear. Their camp was little more than a graveyard of old tech and scorched supplies. They had no real weapons, no protection. Eli looked around quietly. You've been hiding? He said. The man with the spear spat in the sand. Hiding is all we can do, boy. They took our ships, our weapons, even our spirit. Eli knelt beside a broken console, brushing away sand. Beneath it, the faint glow of a still-working core flickered. Maybe not everything, he said. The survivors gathered around as he opened the old panel. The honey badger sniffed it once, then sat down beside him, watching. Lyra looked over his shoulder. What is it? It's an old transmitter, Eli said. If I can get it working, I can call the fleet. The human fleet? The gray-haired woman asked, her voice shaking with disbelief. Eli looked up at her. The fleet that's coming. They just don't know we're still alive. The survivors stared at him in stunned silence. Before anyone could speak, a deep rumble shook the ground. Dust fell from the cliffs above. Lyra's heart froze. They found us. Searchlights swept the crater as alien dropships descended, engines roaring. Karzek's banner gleamed on their sides. Soldiers began pouring out, dozens, maybe hundreds, forming a circle around the ruins. Eli stood, calm as ever. Lyra, he said. Stay behind the wreck. She hesitated. Eli, there's too many... The honey badger snarled, fur rising, eyes glowing gold again. The boy placed a hand on its neck and whispered something no one else heard. The creature went still, its muscles coiling like springs. When the first plasma shot hit the sand, Eli whispered one word. Now! The honey badger moved like lightning, tearing into the alien front line before they could fire again. The battlefield erupted into chaos, flames, smoke, and screams mixing into one storm. Eli ran to the console, fingers moving over the dusty controls. Sparks jumped from the circuits. Lyra crouched beside him, shielding him from falling debris. Can you fix it? She shouted. Almost, he said. Just keep them off me. Lyra turned. The honey badger was a blur of fury, leaping from one enemy to another, claws glowing from the reflected plasma light. But for every alien it dropped, more poured in. A bolt struck near Eli, shattering part of the console. Lyra cried out, but the boy didn't stop. Almost there. Then a voice echoed from above, deep, booming, full of rage. Karzek had returned, armor repaired, his body burning with vengeance. You can't hide, human. Eli didn't look up. I'm not hiding, he said quietly. The transmitter flared to life. A signal pulsed through the air, climbing past the clouds. The sky itself seemed to shimmer. Far above, something ancient began to answer. The signal from the transmitter tore through the night sky, flashing like a spark across the dark. Every ship above Zareth 9 felt the pulse, a single coded message buried deep in human language, a sound that only one fleet could understand. Eli didn't look up. He was still hunched over the glowing panel, hands moving fast across the broken screen. The machine hissed, then fell silent. He exhaled. It's done. Lyra knelt beside him, clutching his arm. Who did you call? The ones who never stopped listening, Eli said. Before she could ask again, another explosion rocked the crater. The alien dropships circled overhead, releasing waves of soldiers. Plasma fire lit up the ruins, turning the metal wrecks into burning shields. The survivors scattered for cover, screaming, firing their scavenged rifles that barely scratched the enemy armor. The honey badger moved through it all like a shadow of war. It leapt from one wreck to another, tearing down anything that came too close. Its roars echoed through the canyon, a sound that sent even trained alien warriors stumbling backward. Every time it vanished, another group of soldiers fell. Karzek descended from his command ship, armor reforged, glowing with red battle lights. His voice thundered through the canyon. Human child, I'll grind your bones into dust. Eli stood up slowly. He didn't flinch, didn't back away. You talk too much, he said softly. Karzek roared and raised his spear, launching it with a burst of energy. The weapon sliced through the air like lightning. Lyra shouted his name, but Eli didn't move. The honey badger did. It jumped, twisting midair, slamming into the spear before it reached the boy. The weapon shattered, pieces flying in all directions. The creature landed hard, growling, blood streaking its fur. Karzek's yellow eyes widened. That thing defies logic. Eli's tone was calm, almost pitying. That's because it doesn't need it. The alien warlord lunged forward, claws extended. The honey badger met him head-on. The clash was brutal, metal against fury. Sparks flew. The creature's claws raked through armor, while Karzek's strikes sent sand erupting in waves. Lyra grabbed a fallen rifle and fired at the soldiers closing in. Her shots hit one, then another. She wasn't a fighter, but the look in her eyes had changed. She wasn't the weak girl anymore. Keep fighting, shouted the man with the spear. Hold the line! But the aliens kept coming. Then the sky changed. The twin moons flickered as massive shadows appeared above the clouds, enormous human ships, their hulls marked with the faded symbol of Earth's fleet. The signal had reached them. Humanity had returned. Lyra gasped, her voice trembling. "Eli, you did it." He didn't smile. His eyes stayed on Karzek, who froze as the warships broke through the clouds. Beams of blue light rained down, vaporizing alien transports in seconds. The survivors in the crater raised their hands, crying in disbelief. The honey badger finally threw Karzek backward, sending him crashing into a broken engine core. The alien gasped, stunned. "You think this changes anything?" He spat. "You're still weak!" "You hide behind monsters." Eli walked closer. His face was streaked with dirt, his small frame casting a long shadow under the burning sky. "You don't understand," he said quietly. "The monster isn't beside me." He pointed to the honey badger, which stood bleeding but unbroken. "He's a reminder. You called us weak, but humans survive everything, even extinction. You tried to erase us, and here we are again." Karzek tried to rise, but the honey badger stepped forward, pressing him down with one claw. The alien trembled. "What are you?" "Human," Eli said simply. Above them, human ships descended, their landing lights cutting through the smoke. Drop pods hit the sand one after another, soldiers pouring out in armored suits. The survivors in the crater fell to their knees, relief flooding through their faces. Lyra turned to Eli. "They came for us," she said softly. Eli nodded, though his eyes looked far away. "They came because of him," he murmured, looking at the honey badger. A commander stepped from the nearest pod, his voice crackling through his helmet. "By order of the Terran Defense Fleet, survivors, stand down." "You're safe now!" Lyra blinked, tears welling in her eyes. But Eli didn't move. He stared toward the horizon where the alien fleet was retreating, the last of their ships vanishing into the dark sky. "It's not over," he whispered. "They'll come back," the commander overheard and frowned. "Son, what's your name?" "Eli," the boy said. The man's eyes widened behind his visor. "Eli, there's a message in your signal." A code none of us recognized. "What did you send?" Eli looked up at him, his voice steady. "A warning." The commander's jaw tightened. "To who?" Eli's answer was quiet, but the wind carried it across the sand. "To everyone. The humans are still alive." The honey badger gave a low, rumbling growl beside him. It was almost a promise. High above, the fleet began to turn toward the stars, engines igniting in brilliant arcs of light. Zareth 9 was free, but something larger had begun, a movement, a spark, a legend that would spread across the galaxy. Lyra stood beside Eli, watching the fire trails fade into the night. For the first time, she wasn't afraid. The boy glanced down at the honey badger, who was licking its wounds but standing tall. "Rest now," he whispered. "You've done enough." The creature looked up, eyes glowing softly in the moonlight, and gave a small snarl, not anger, but pride. The humans had survived. The galaxy would never laugh again. The human fleet's arrival changed everything. Zareth 9 was no longer a forgotten graveyard. The survivors were lifted from the dunes in transport shuttles, their faces half lit by the engine's blue glow. Lyra watched the desert fade beneath her as she sat by the window, still gripping a small piece of sand-stained cloth, the only thing she owned from her old life. Across from her, Eli sat quietly, the honey badger resting at his feet. It had been cleaned and treated by the med units, though no one dared touch it directly. Every soldier that passed gave the creature a wide berth. Even wounded, it radiated danger. When the shuttle docked with the command ship TDF Valiant, the survivors stepped out to blinding light. Humans in heavy armor saluted them. The lost children of Earth, finally found. A tall officer with gray hair approached Eli. "So this is the boy from the signal," he said, his tone both curious and cautious. "And that thing is your companion?" Eli nodded once. "He's called Badger." The officer studied the creature, its claws tapping lightly on the metal floor. "He tore through an alien battalion?" Eli's answer was simple. "They mocked her." He answered, Lyra stepped beside him, her voice trembling but proud. Without him, none of us would be alive. The officer looked at her, then at the boy again. You're both coming with me. They were taken through the ship's long corridors to the command deck. Through the wide glass panels, the stars stretched endless and cold. Below them, Zareth 9 burned quietly in the dark, the last alien ship disappearing into hyperspace. The officer turned to Eli. We intercepted part of your transmission. It wasn't just a distress call. Eli's expression didn't change. It wasn't meant to be. The officer folded his arms. Then what was it? A signal to the others, Eli said. To anyone left on the outer colonies. A message that humans are still fighting. Lyra's eyes widened. You sent it across systems? Eli nodded. Every relay station that still listens will hear it? The officer sighed. You just started something big, kid. The aliens won't ignore this. They already didn't, Eli replied softly. From the corner, a voice cut through the room. Sir, incoming transmission from the council sector. Multiple fleets moving. The officer frowned. Already? Affirmative. They're responding to the Zareth 9 broadcast. Lyra's chest tightened. They're coming for us again? Eli stood, calm as ever. Then we finish what they started. The officer stared at him, a child with the gaze of a commander. You realize what you're saying? Eli looked out the window where the stars shimmered like silent witnesses. They think we're broken. Let's show them we're not. The honey badger growled softly as if agreeing. Hours later, the war room was alive with movement. Tactical screens flickered with maps of enemy fleets approaching from 3 sectors. Human ships were being prepared for battle. Crews rushed through corridors, shouting orders, rearming stations. Lyra sat near the viewport, watching the chaos, trying to make sense of it all. Eli, she said quietly, how do you stay so calm? He looked at her. Because fear is what they expect. The honey badger stirred, its claws clicking on the metal floor. It looked restless, eyes scanning every movement like it could smell the war coming. A deep hum filled the ship as the fleet activated its jump drives. The officer's voice echoed through the speakers. All units, prepare for hyperspace entry. Target, enemy command sector. Lyra's heart pounded. We're going after them? Eli nodded. We can't hide forever. The stars outside stretched into lines of light as the Valiant jumped. In that instant, the survivors were no longer refugees. They were soldiers in the making. Hours later, the fleet emerged above a dark red world, the alien command base. Dozens of enemy ships glowed beneath the clouds, ready and waiting. The battle began the moment they arrived. Explosions rippled across space. Plasma bolts streaked between ships. The human fleet fought like something reborn, angry, desperate, unstoppable. In the middle of the chaos, Eli stood beside the command window, eyes locked on the enemy flagship. That's where Karzek went, he said quietly. Lyra turned to him. How do you know? I can feel him, the honey badger growled, pressing its claws against the glass, staring at the same ship. Get me to the surface, Eli said to the officer. The man hesitated. That's suicide, boy. Eli's tone didn't change. You asked what I started. This is it. Lyra looked at him, frightened but certain now that he wasn't just a child. He was something else, something forged by loss and defiance. Minutes later, a dropship launched from the Valiant, cutting through the flames toward the planet's surface. Inside it, Eli sat between Lyra and the honey badger, both silent. Outside, the sky burned crimson. When the hatch opened, they stepped into the heart of the alien stronghold. Black towers, red mist, and the sound of thunder. The war had found its new battlefield. The red world burned beneath black clouds. The air smelled like metal and ash. Alien towers rose out of the ground like claws reaching for the sky. From the horizon, fire from the orbiting fleets lit the atmosphere, thunder echoing through the wasteland. Eli walked through the dust with Lyra beside him, the honey badger padding between their steps. The creature's fur shimmered faintly in the crimson light. Every few seconds, its ears twitched, listening for the enemy. They were deep inside the alien command sector now, surrounded by ruins that still pulsed with strange energy. Dead soldiers, both human and alien, lay scattered across the broken stone. The air hummed with tension. Lyra whispered, "Eli, are we really going to find him here?" "He's waiting," Eli said softly. "He always knew I'd come." The ground trembled. From the far end of the corridor, the huge gates of the alien citadel opened with a roar of steel and wind. Out stepped Karzek, larger than before, wrapped in armor fused with energy coils that glowed like veins of fire. His eyes burned yellow. He looked down at the boy and the girl standing before him. "You brought your pet again," he said, his voice echoing through the chamber. "Do you really believe you can destroy a warlord with a child's monster?" Eli didn't answer. He stepped forward, calm as ever. "You still don't understand what you're fighting." Karzek laughed, a deep, cruel sound. "You humans don't belong here. You're soft, small, fragile things." Eli met his gaze. "Then why are you afraid of us?" The alien's grin faded. Before he could speak, the honey badger growled, a low, thunderous sound that filled the entire hall. The air seemed to vibrate with its fury. Lyra stepped back, shielding her face as dust and sand swirled. Karzek roared and charged, his massive blade raised high. The honey badger leapt forward, claws striking sparks from the metal floor. The two collided in a storm of light and sound. Armor cracked, claws tore, plasma hissed. Every strike echoed like a drumbeat of war. Lyra screamed as Karzek slammed the creature into a wall, crushing stone. But the honey badger didn't fall. It roared and clawed through his armor again, ripping through circuits and alien flesh. The chamber shook. Eli stood motionless, his eyes glowing faintly gold. "The same color as the creatures." Lyra turned toward him, realizing what was happening. "Eli, you're linked to it, aren't you?" He didn't look at her. "We share the same memory." The same rage. The honey badger moved faster now, too fast for even Karzek to counter. Each slash hit deeper, cleaner, guided by Eli's focus. The alien stumbled, blood and fire spilling from his armor. He roared in defiance. "You think this will save you?" "You're still weak!" Eli's voice was calm. "Then why are you losing?" The honey badger lunged one final time, slamming into Karzek's chest. The impact cracked his armor apart. The alien fell to his knees, gasping, his weapon shattered beside him. Eli walked closer, the honey badger standing at his side. Karzek looked up, fear in his eyes for the first time. "What are you, human?" Eli stared down at him. "Something your empire created by accident." "Hope!" The honey badger roared, a sound that shook the tower to its core, and Karzek's last breath vanished into the dust. Silence followed. The citadel lights dimmed, their pulse fading into black. Outside, the alien fleet began to crumble, their command lost. Human ships broke through the sky, chasing the retreating enemy. Lyra fell to her knees, tears streaming down her dusty face. "It's over," she whispered. Eli looked at her and shook his head gently. "No, it's beginning," she frowned. "Beginning?" He gazed toward the horizon where the first rays of dawn cut through the smoke. "They'll tell this story. The one about a weak girl, a human child, and a beast that wouldn't stop fighting. And next time the galaxy laughs at humans," he looked down at the honey badger, who stared back with glowing eyes, "they'll remember how it ended." The honey badger stepped forward, lifting its head to the rising sun. Its roar rolled across the battlefield, deep, defiant, and full of life. Lyra smiled through her tears. The sound wasn't frightening anymore. It was freedom. Above them, the human fleet began to form a new symbol in orbit, the mark of Earth reborn. Across the galaxy, the message Eli sent continued to spread, waking hidden outposts and long silent colonies. One by one, humanity was rising again. Eli turned to Lyra. "Let's go home." And for the first time since the war began, those words meant something real. The honey badger walked beside them, its claws leaving small tracks in the dust. Tracks that would become legend.